I'm feeling kind of basic today. Top 5 side ones, track ones.
So a friend of mine from high school and my wife's grandmother were having a sidebar on my Facebook account in the comments about how they think I should make a top 5 sales of all time video, like the best, the highest profit 5 items I ever did. So I guess we're gonna do that for Grandma and do a little bit of a deep dive onto each thing to try to make this an informational, not just braggy video. You'll want to stay tuned to the first and number 1 and number 2 because they're both over $1,000 profit. With that said, number 1 and 2 are definitely right. Some of these things are years old, and so eBay doesn't have a way for me to check it, and I don't keep track. So it's possible if you remember something that should be on the list because you've been watching the channel forever, let me know in the comments. But these are, to the best of my recollection, the top 5 items that I've ever sold for. One of them is 2 items, but they were one sale. I'll have some honorable mentions that are things I bought cheap in huge lots and made giant profits on the big lots. But these are like singular items, essentially the best profit I've ever had.
What are your all-time top 5 records?
We'll start with an honorable mention that even people newer to the channel might remember, but it didn't make the list because I spent too much money on it. So this guitar, Kalamazoo, if you find this guitar out, buy it. I paid $500 at auction because one other guy at the auction knew what it was, and it sold for $850. So I mean, there's still quite a bit of profit there. And that guitar I took to a luthier, and they told me it's not worth what it would cost to fix it, but it would probably have been $1,500 to take that to being a good guitar. I wasn't going to invest that kind of money, but it would have been worth $2,000 or $3,000. And if you've got one that doesn't have to be restored, if it's just playable, then it's $4,000 or $5,000 guitar. I found one at an auction, and they are out there, and people don't necessarily know Kalamazoo, Michigan is where Gibson guitars were originally made. And so when Gibson needed a budget-friendly guitar in the Depression era, they put Kalamazoo in the title and made really nice guitars under the Kalamazoo name. And they are unbelievably collectible now. So what did take the number 5 spot? That would be this monorail toy, the Grand Floridian, a model essentially of the resort at Walt Disney World. A buddy of mine called me. He's like, hey, we've got a bunch of this Disney World stuff, and I know that it's the kind of thing that you want to buy. So I went over there and I negotiated a price. It ended up being $450 for a whole bunch of stuff, but it basically broke down to be $30 a piece after I put the lots together and made listings. So for $30, I got this piece, put it all together, it was all there, and I sold it for $375. So number 4 is these lamps. They look like martini glasses with olives in them, and the red inside the olive is the bulb, and the rest of it is just artistic. I paid $8 a piece for these at a yard sale, and they are hugely desirable. I remember them being a thing at like maybe Spencer's Gifts or something, and so when I saw them, I was like, those are neat, and I know that they're old. I'm gonna look them up, and turns out they were selling for $250 a piece. I listed the pair at the time; those were the only pair for $489, and I ended up taking a $400 offer. And so I was pretty excited to get that. But pop art kind of stuff like this, barware decoration, really unusual things, and lamps in pairs. They would need to have the shades, except these don't have shades. And unusual looking lamps, really, like lava lamps do really well. Weird mid-century modern looking lamps do really well. So there's a lot of lessons to learn from this, but look out for these. If you see these wire looking martini glass lamps, they are real desirable, have a really high sell-through rate, and I did phenomenally well finding them for $8 at a garage sale. Now, I don't know if this should be number 4 or number 3. Maybe the lamps should switch places with this one because they were cheaper. But I paid $60 for this race car. And it's a 60s looking tin toy race car. Had the remote, had a bunch of accessories. And it was on Facebook Marketplace. It was on Facebook on a thrift store's Facebook page. And they were getting lit up for asking $60 for this toy car. And I called them with my credit card and paid for it over the phone. So I basically bought it sight unseen and went and got it. And I knew that I wasn't going to lose money on it at $60, but I didn't know even exactly what it was. And then come to find out, it was a 1960 Sears model for like car that had a remote, and it was like remote control but not radio. Like there was a remote wire, and it was for Indianapolis 500, and working they go for $600 or $800. But this one I couldn't exactly get to work right, so I marked it all the way down to $440, and I ended up taking a $410 offer. Hey, come here. And here comes a kid that unless you have been with the channel for more than a couple of weeks, you haven't met yet. This is Caleb.
Hi.
So now they've seen everybody. This is Caleb. You're going to go be in 3rd, 4th? You're going to be a freshman in high school? Oh, 1st grade. He's going to go be in 1st grade. Pretty cool. Are you getting a tooth? Or you have a wiggle tooth?
Wiggle tooth.
Wiggle tooth. Sweet. Say bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe. So that is it's an old toy, tin toy made in Japan. Cars are going to do well. They just are. So this one was, this part of the deal with it being so expensive was the scale of it. It was like 14 inches long or something. And so bigger is better. Like the small, a little bit bigger than Hot Wheels size cars aren't as pricey. They're still good, and if they work, they're like wind-ups, they'll do really well for you. But anything that feels like an aluminum can, so it's tin and it's made in Japan and it's automotive related, is probably going to do pretty well. And that is what I knew about this one, enough to be able to spend $60 sight unseen and know that I'm going to get it to make me some money. But $400 was probably a lot more than I expected to make that day. It's a good day. So the kids are playing in the yard at the moment. They're supposed to be cleaning up the mess they made earlier, but they're really just playing in the yard at the moment. Please don't spray me with a hose. Let's go over some honorable mentions. This popcorn tin from the early days of Mario and Nintendo. Judah's picking up a rake. You wouldn't expect, it was on Facebook Marketplace for a long time, and if I bought it now I wouldn't sell it, but back then I needed the money a whole lot worse. I picked it up for $20. I had to go get it, and even then, believe it or not, this empty popcorn tin sold for $120. So if you see these, pick them up. I mean, it is possible for people to have these popcorn tins, using it as a trash can or in an estate sale where it's the company didn't look it up, or it's in a closet, that kind of thing. You can find stuff like this, so pick it up. Watch out for that. One more honorable mention and we'll get into the top 2. This is the back of my truck a day after I went to a local auction for a government entity. I think it was a high school, but I've done it a couple of times. And so this is just one where I picked up, I think I ended up bidding $20 a chair for 20 chairs. And it was just me. It's always just me and one other guy. Everybody else dropped out at $5 a chair. And me and this guy went back and forth to $20 a chair choice. and I just said I'll take them all. And they are Herman Miller chairs. I once got a stack of them from the same high school, $20 a stack, and there were like 6 or 8 chairs in the stack. And I once got a pile of them from the county, like cleaning out an office, and all at government public auctions. I don't even know if that's a thing post-pandemic or not. I haven't seen any, but I'm not really looking. So there's something to keep in mind. If your local municipalities are having auctions, if the high school is having a public auction, if the town is clearing out of storage, and they kind of have to do public auctions for that stuff. But a lot of that kind of goes to a high bid site or something like that anymore. But it isn't impossible for them to have a public auction. So at any rate, if you find it's this specific shape of chair, like there's a bunch of knockoffs, but it'll say Herman Miller and have this stamp on the bottom of it. If you find Herman Miller shell chairs, either side shells or arm shells, the arm shells are worth a lot more. They're harder to find. If you find them, they're worth quite a bit of money. I find them at thrift stores every once in a while, and they're, marked with the regular chairs most of the time, not more than $20. But you find them, and they will do really, really well, especially in sets. But I have more than 3 times come home with a truckload of these chairs from a municipality auction, and made thousands of dollars. But it's not one sale where I made that thousands of dollars, so that's why these are an honorable mention.
Now, would we ship these, or would the buyer come pick them up?
That's a great question, Levi. The buyer came and picked up a bunch. I did some with local, but for the most part, people don't want the legs. So you would take them apart and ship just the top of the chair and recycle the base. There are a couple of different bases. The ones you're going to find with municipalities are generally referred to as H bases. H bases aren't worth anything. If you find it, you'll see Hobby Lobby, places like that have these what are called Eiffel Tower bases, and they're terrible facsimiles. But if you find a genuine one with an Eiffel Tower base, that's worth something. If you find them with dowel bases, those are worth money. But the ones with H bases really aren't worth much. You'll find them a lot with stackable bases, and the stackable bases aren't worth anything. The H bases are worth a little. The Eiffel Tower bases are pretty good. The dowel bases are really good. And if you find like a rocker chair base or a cat's cradle base, that's real money. But for the most part, you're going to find them with stackable bases, and you're just going to take them off of the base and pitch the bases, recycle the bases. You can sell them separately, but that's how you manage to ship a set of 6. Is you do them like top down and bottom up, and then put the other ones in the box and kind of make a square out of the L's, and you can ship a set of 6 to France for like $125. I've done it a bunch of times. So the answer is you ship them. Now, something else to keep in mind about Herman Miller bases, and this is a lot of information for an honorable mention. The bottoms, there are 2 configurations on the bottom, either a wide mount or a narrow mount. And a wide mount can only receive a stackable base. So that's what you're more likely to find when you're buying them from a municipality. And that is not as desirable, but it can be changed to a narrow mount base. So if you find it with a narrow mount base, they're going to be a lot better to work with, and the buyer's going to be happier buying them. If you buy them with a wide mount base, don't fix them yourself. Just sell them as a wide mount base, but understand that somebody is probably going to pay less because the collector on the other end is going to want to move the shock mounts, which is a kind of an expensive process, and then buy a new base for it. Number 2 is Bitosi.
Dun.
Number 2. Not that kind of number 2. Come on, Levi. Bitosi is a family name in Italy, and artists who made pottery. And then in the late 40s, Aldo Landi became the head of creative design for the Bitosi group in Italy, and he brought in like modernist design, and his stuff you can still see his influence on like contemporary stuff you'd buy at Target today is influenced heavily by Bitosi and by Aldo Landi. And so if you find Bitosi pottery, ceramics, study it. You should, when you're done watching this video, look up Bitosi. So I'm in a thrift store, totally unaware of any of what I just told you. And I found this vase. And I thought it was like really cool looking Hobby Lobby. And it was $5.99. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm going to buy that. And I'm sure I can get $25, $30 for it on eBay. It'll be a kind of a pain in the butt to ship. And before I had a YouTube, before Instagram was even a thing, I think, I posted pictures of, hey, this is my haul on a Facebook group about reselling, and 5 or 6 people, and this is a clue for you, you're probably already aware, 5 or 6 people in that group private messaged me, hey, my aunt really liked that kind of vase that you have there, so if you're interested in selling it, I would buy it from you. And I'm like, well, that's a telltale. If it's like one guy, maybe that's a true story. 6 or 7 people, they know something you don't know. Probably they know something you don't know if you only get one too, but so that prompted me to look further into it. So then in a different group, I posted, hey, does anybody know what this is? And somebody was nice enough to say, this is the group you need to ask. It's called Bitosi and Ceramic Italian Pottery Mid-Century Modern or something. I'll put a link to it up here. Those people in that group are really particular. They're kind of snooty. You're not allowed to talk about value at all. And so you kind of just got to use it to get an idea. They'll tell you whether or not it's real. They have a lot of resources of pictures of what is real and what isn't. But I paid $6 for this after doing some research, getting some help from other resellers in the community that I didn't even know. I ended up putting it up for $1,300. Buy it now, free shipping. And it went to an art gallery like in New York City. It is still sitting on Times Square in New York City at a place called End of History. And so I bought it for $6. He bought it for $1,100, and he's probably asking $3,000 or $4,000 for it, which is great. I don't get upset when resellers buy things from me because I make money and other people are allowed to make money too, and I want to get stuff sold. So I hope the guy gets $10,000 for it. But I made my money. Second best pick I ever got. But when you're done watching this video, look up Aldo Landi, look up Bitosi, and figure out what to look for. The animals, there's definitely birds, cats, and a horse that are iconic, and you might find those out somewhere. And if you know what you're looking for before you go in, you can make some money. So I was recording for this number 5 video, and I realized that number 1, like part of it didn't record at all, and it was darkened. So we're doing it again the next day. Number 1 is Levi's. If you're not familiar with Levi's, big E, well, you're probably familiar with this Levi's image, but before 1971, for sure, some might have existed in 1972. Levi changed from being a emblem of all capital letters to a capital L and the lowercase other letters, but the only one that really it makes any difference is the E. And collectors have since called the old logo, 1971 and earlier, Big E Levi's. for obvious reasons. And so if you find a tag that says big, that has a big E in the Levi's, you can know for certain that it predates 1972, except they re-released them in like recently, like 21 or 19 or something like that. They re-released some Big E stuff. Well, I was at a fill-a-bag yard sale, and Evelyn was 2, and she was with me running around. Maybe she had just turned 3. Anyway, she was running around being crazy, and I was digging through a bunch of clothes and not finding much. I found this Tommy Pickle tank top, but and it was vintage, but I still have it. It's still for sale in my store. And she ran off and found a tote and started pulling stuff out of this tote. And I was like, is that stuff for sale? I'm sorry, we'll put it back away. And the lady's like, yeah, I just hadn't got to it yet. If you find anything in there, you can just throw it in the bag. And I pulled out this jacket that I'd never seen a jacket like that before. And I noticed that it was a Big E Levi tag. So I threw it in the bag, and I didn't exactly know what I had. Well, it turns out Levi had a type 1 jacket, a type 2 jacket, and what we use now, which is known as a type 3, a trucker jacket. But Levi's denim jackets are hugely collectible. I paid essentially $1.50 for this jacket and brought it home. It's small enough that it fit Judah when he was in 5th grade, or the summer. No, he'd have to have been 6th grade. Anyway, small enough to fit a 6th grader, not a men's adult good sized jacket, but it sold. I put it up for $1,500 after doing a whole bunch of research, and it sold in a couple of days for $12.75, and it shipped while the buyer's username had the words of Walt Disney in it. It was a person, she ended up shipping to Japan. So all the major players in Levi collectability are almost all in Japan. The Japanese collector market for vintage Levi's is unreal. You'll get some good money over here for them, but if you can ship them to Japan, you'll get even better money. So that's all I'm here to say is know that Big E Levi's can be a big deal, and vintage Levi's are made in the USA. Levi's, even the small E Levi's, can do really well. But if you find Big E Levi's, especially in jackets, there's more to know. There's red stitching and selvage denim and other stuff. But if you find Big E, it's probably a really good thing. So do some research before you just put a price on Big E Levi stuff, and look out for Big E Levi stuff. But it is rare as hen's teeth. You're not going to find it often. I found it twice in my 10 years so far doing this. One was the jacket that was the best find I ever had, and one was a purse that was like, I paid $4 for a purse and it sold for like $60, which is great, but it's not an honorable mention on this list, except for that it's a Levi Big E, so it pertains to this jacket. All right, we got to get back to working on the yard, but I wanted to make sure we got this put in to the video. Okay, yeah, so another genre that is an honorable mention, and I have so many that were close to making the top 5 but didn't, is helmets, vintage helmets. You do not want to sell a helmet that is used for someone to wear on a motorcycle, because if it's been in one little crash, if it's been dropped too hard, it isn't suitable for protection. But I like to sell vintage helmets, and like Bell is a good brand. Like, you can buy Bell stuff at Walmart now and it's not good, but a vintage old Bell stuff like this BMX helmet, or like these motorcycle helmets, Bell does really well. And Arthur Fulmer, or AF, is another brand that does super duper well. So keep an eye out for those. Bright colors, sparkle paint, and the trim that goes around like your face, depending on how it's built. If the trim is chrome or has chrome in it, that is a higher end helmet than one that has black in it. And I have picked these up for $1, $2, $5, $10, and I'll put up some comps. Arthur Fulmer helmets do really crazy well. and that one BMX helmet that I found that was a Bell did ridiculously well. So look for vintage helmets, and I would just caution you to put that this is for display, not for protection, in the listing, because I always do, just to kind of cover my patootie. So Grandma, Drew, I hope that was the video that you were looking for. Hopefully everybody got a little bit of information out of it, and hopefully everybody likes, comments, subscribes, follows, clicks the bell, all the things that you do. We thank you for it, and we'll see you on the next one.